I want to bring in my guest, though. Let's have a little domestic news. People need to, as I say, eat their peas. We are joined with Sabrina Salvati, or commonly known as Sabby Sabs. She is a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster, member of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multicultural network co-op of everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering communities through education, organization, and direct action. Sabrina, welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Jamal.
Thank you for joining me. I think we have to get first story. There's no way around it. And I want to get your take on this. And it is somebody who let the cat out the bag in 2022. I just let him play it out, say it himself.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation. And because...
Now, they called this a gaffe. They said that's a gaffe. That's totally a gaffe. The issue I have with him calling that a gaffe is, A, his body is riddled with cancer. There's that. 2, he continues coherently as he makes that statement. That's why I and many other people in Delaware have cancer. Delaware has such a highest cancer rate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's a weird gaffe. He didn't stutter. He didn't alter his language. And I know people are looking back at this now thinking to themselves, okay, well, how long did Joe Biden have cancer? What did they know and when did they know it? And this is somewhat of a big deal, right? I mean, well, for one, before people issue too many sympathies of Joe Biden, I want to show this real quick. Just Israeli attacks render last Gaza hospital for cancer treatment inoperable. I call it ironic. My mom is probably cringing. Listen to me say this, but it is what it is. My sympathies are not necessarily, can't see it. My sympathies are not necessarily there for Joe Biden on this. I will reserve my sympathies for the people who are living in the world that Joe Biden helped create with the 70% of the money that he was given to a genocide, with the diplomatic support he was given to covering for that genocide, knowing full well that he was starving. The starvation, by the way, didn't just start. The starvation goes all the way back, even in the Joe Biden administration, where you had people who resigned because Joe Biden, Blinken, Sullivan changed the report that was coming out saying, yes, they are actually starving the Palestinian population, and then trying to con the American public saying, hey, we're working hard to get a deal, which, again, was also a lie and outed, by the way, by Israeli media, who pointed out that at no point Israel was shocked. They said, thank God we had Joe Biden as our president, or Joe Biden as president during that time, because, we were shocked that he let us get away with all of this without putting any pressure on us. Right here.
Yep.
Right here. This right here. I don't want people to think I'm making this up. This is, legitimately what took place. Biden officials admit they never pressured Israel for the ceasefire, as Israel leaders boast of playing Washington. They said, thank God Joe Biden was president at the time because he never pressured us for anything. So again, bear me, I don't know where you fall on this, so I'm not going to put this on you. I would say this purely for myself. Spare me your sympathies. In this case, the man literally presided over genocide for over a year, if not more, before handing this off to Donald Trump, who's also presiding over a genocide. So, sympathy for Hitler. And no, I'm not calling him Hitler, but I'm just making the point. Does people care that Hitler had gas? Or if Hitler had cancer, or if Hitler had, a stump toe? My feelings aren't there for that.
Yeah.
That's a hell of an intro. I'm sorry. There's cover-up associated with this that people are talking about, though. And give me your take on all of it.
Yeah. So I think that what people have to remember is that the president of the United States has a physical every year. There is a doctor that is assigned to the president of the United States. So You mean to tell me that all those years that Biden was in office, they didn't catch that? They didn't catch that the cancer, the diagnosis, because at this point it is aggressive, and they said that it's made its way to the bone. So it's been there.
Yeah.
So I just find that kind of hard to believe. And then two, I want to remind everybody that Joe Biden was the one that said that if Medicare for All bill came across his desk, he would veto it. Right. So when this announcement happened yesterday, and I covered this live yesterday, I immediately thought about all the people that I know that have had a cancer diagnosis that couldn't afford the treatment and couldn't afford to have the best doctors. Joe Biden has the best healthcare, the best resources to be able to try to find a way to get this under control or even just to treat it. There are a lot of people in this country that go into medical debt, that go into bankruptcy because they can't afford cancer treatments. And that's even after insurance is paid. I know people that have been on chemo, and even after the insurance payments, they still had to pay $1,600 a week just to try to survive. So I don't have this sympathy for Joe Biden. I don't have this sympathy for people. They have the resources, they have the means to get the best healthcare possible, and they have a chance. And for him to say that he basically didn't want everybody to have health care, didn't even expand Obamacare, which is what he ran on. No, I'm thinking about all the people that can't afford it, all the people that can't afford treatment. So that's one thing. Two, to your point about Gaza, this guy spent over a year killing all these kids in Gaza. And you have people like Simone Sanders on Twitter right now saying Joe Biden is a fine man. A fine man? Does a fine man co-write the crime bill that predominantly targets Black men, taking Black men out of the home, fueling the prison industrial complex? Does a fine man do that? Does a fine man sit up there and continue to kill these kids? Even after, and lie to the American people and say that they're working on it. They were never working on this. That was a lie. They were never working on a ceasefire. Does a fine man do that? Does a fine man, don't forget, Tara Reid till this day still accuses Joe Biden of sexual assault. Does a fine man treat a staffer that way, treat a woman that way? Does a fine man say that he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle? No, because you see, the Joe Biden that I remember was an asshole. Pardon my language. That's the Joe Biden I remember. The Joe Biden I remember was the guy who stood on the Senate floor and said he didn't care what environment someone grew up in. He wanted them off the street. That's the Joe Biden that I know. The Joe Biden that I'm familiar with was friends with racist Strom Thurmond and Byrd, all these politicians that actively created laws to keep Black people where they were and to prevent any type of progress institutionally for Black people in this country. That is the Joe Biden that I am familiar with. And that is not a fine man. So you have Simone Sanders, Piers Morgan, all these people all of a sudden want to kiss up and all this kind of stuff and say you should be happy about him. Nina Turner is on Twitter right now saying, oh, sympathy and all this, all these people who still want to be a part of the club, because that's really what this is about. So I don't have that type of sympathy for Joe Biden. I kind of see this as karma.
I was going to name it ironic, Joe Biden's cancer, but it didn't fit in the bio. It only allowed you 100 characters, and ironic would have been too long to fit into it, because it is ironic. I mean, like the notion that within the same day that it breaks, that because what people, the big ticket items that people see are hospital attack in Gaza, bomb strike in Gaza, people under the rubble in Gaza. What you don't see are the cases of people with cancer, kidney failure, liver disease that also need to be treated. When I was in Bethlehem, I ran into this Belgian Palestinian woman and she was talking about basically working in maternity ward. And she wanted to take me through some of the parts of basically the West Bank, Bethlehem. And it is astonishing, like the level of poverty that they're living under. And that is not having bombardments. Okay, now add in bombardments. That person with a baby, that person with cancer, that person that needs dialysis. What happens to those people? Like under this level of attacks and this level of bombardment. And when you add to that, Joe Biden paid for 70% of it. Oh, that's astonishing. And then lied to the American public saying, hey, we're doing everything we can to stop Israel from doing this. Okay, no, you're not. You're lying. Not only are you lying, you're paying for it. You're giving diplomatic support to them doing that. You're going to the UN, fighting in the UN Security Council to prevent any level of accountability for it. And even when you are pressed into passing something from the UN Security Council, Blinken comes out and says, this is non-binding. Okay, well, that's shocking to the UN Security Council, considering they don't pass non-binding resolutions in that way. Meaning we covered under the Biden administration constantly over and over and over again. And so, yeah, these people need to spare me the stuff of now that he's ill, now that he's sick. Oh, we need to send our prayers to Joe Biden. I think you're right. I think God got involved. I go beyond karma. I say God got involved on something like this. I have no feelings for this, no sympathy for this. I have no empathy for this at all. And look, I get it. When I drop dead, you're going to have somebody from Ukraine dancing on my grave. God bless them, right? I'm accountable to my own conscience in this. He has not been living to the betterment of humanity, let alone other people who are in a similar situation that he is currently in. And so, yeah, I can't even strain myself to pretend as if I have sympathies for this. Yes, I'm the guy who goes to a funeral and shocked that people said good things about people at a funeral when they were assholes their entire life. I'm that guy. I was shocked when they were saying that stuff about my grandfather. I was like, who the hell are they talking about? Is this the same person? I cried for my grandfather and was still shocked that they were saying that stuff at the funeral about him. If I were somebody who I love, I felt that way. You can imagine what I think about Joe Biden right now. So
I feel like this was known. They knew about this. I don't think that this is just something that was discovered. Here's what I think the plan was. I think the plan was to keep Biden in the race, or at least that's what Biden wanted, to stay in the race, right? And have him get reelected, which I don't think would have happened, but this is what I think they were thinking. Have him win reelection, and then at some point during his second term, announce that he is diagnosed, and that's how Kamala Harris becomes president. And that's how the Democrats get the first Black woman, president. Agreed. I really do feel like that was the plan. I feel like all these people, you mean to tell me his wife didn't know? Like I
thought that before even the cancer diagnosis. I kept saying they didn't believe Kamala could win. They kept saying Kamala couldn't win over the course of the time. They was like, we don't believe she could win. Her polling isn't great. Her polling isn't great. And then, I'm sorry. I interrupted. I'm sorry. Please.
Yeah, they were going to hand it to her. That was going to be in fact, this was already stated a couple of years ago. There was a gentleman, he was predicting this. He said that the first female president won't become president by an electoral win, that they will be the vice president and the current president would resign. And that's how they would become president. Yeah, I think that's the path they have. They wanted to hand it to her because they knew she couldn't win. Yeah. So it was just, I really think that was their plan. But I got to tell you, people out on the street are not too happy with the Democratic Party. And I'm talking about people that are loyal Democrats. They are upset that the Democrats are not fighting back against Donald Trump. They are upset that Chuck Schumer caved on that bill, that GOP bill. And they're also upset about this Biden situation because what they're saying is they feel like the Democratic Party has been lying to them. They don't know what this party is. And I'm like, oh, you see it now, right? So they're starting to see that the Democratic Party can't be trusted. And so that's part of the reason why the Democratic Party approval rating is so low, even though Trump has been in office since January. So it's been a couple of months now. That's part of the reason. People are feeling like they can't trust the Democratic Party. And a lot of it has to do with this whole Biden cover-up thing, the handing it over, all the passing things over to Kamala, not having a primary. They feel like they're being lied to. And that's the Democratic Party is dead. Is dead.
By the way, they are being lied to. I mean, you would have to have the worst White House doctor ever to not be able to say, "Hey, I think you have cancer." How do you miss that? You don't do a PSA test. You don't do, I don't know, an X-ray. Like, how did they find the cancer this time around?
Not to mention, prostate exam is standard at a certain age.
Exactly.
Like it's just so I no.
I just don't buy it. I don't buy the premise. I don't buy the premise at all. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think they knew they were keeping it under wraps, just like they knew Joe Biden was out of his mind and they kept it under wraps, where they kept it insulated. And you got media lying to the American public. Oh, no, these are deep fakes. These are deep fakes. Look, there may be some media who just believe anything the White House said. Well, the White House said this is not the case. Oh, well, this is not the case because the White House said it. But I can't believe that all of them are this brain dead, where they're like, well, Joe Biden is sharp as a tack when we're in our meetings. And then they're taking this approach of, well, we just need to move forward and deal with what Donald Trump is doing. It's like, no, dude, no. I wish if a person gets arrested, I would imagine the guy who murdered somebody would love to say, hey, we just need to move forward and not look back on the crime that I committed back then. Because the problem is, Donald Trump potentially is in office as a direct result of what they did, whether it's lying about Joe Biden's mental health or lying about the fact that he had cancer. And both of those things are just massive effort cover-ups, either way you look at it. And now you move forward where they put out the Hera tape that they didn't want to put out for the exact reason that he was clearly out of his mind, everything that Robert Hur said in his own testimony that they attacked him for, by the way. And now they're stuck with this thing of, okay, people know we lied about Joe Biden's mental health, and they know that on some level, some people had to know about his physical malady, that his body was riddled with cancer. We're stuck with both of those. What do we do with that? We need to look forward. That's what we need to do, not look back. Okay, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
I think people have to realize the Democratic Party is not a opposition party to the Republican Party. It used to be. A long time ago, the Democratic Party was the party of the working class. That is not the case. That hasn't been the case my entire life. So I just want to be clear about that. So it's been a long time since they were like champion working class people, and they were pushing for, I would say, populist economic like policies. Mm-hmm. But that ship sailed. The Democratic Party has become the party of Goldman Sachs. And like I said, it's been that way my entire life. The problem that you have, and when you see what's happening with David Hogg and the DNC and all those types of things, it's not surprising, right? Because the problem that you have is that when you have
an audience may not know about the David Hogg thing. Go into that just a little bit. I'm sorry to interrupt, but just give them a heads up on what you're referring to.
Yes. So David Hogg was elected as vice chair of the DNC, and his mission has been to remove these incumbents in Congress, the ones that have been there forever that are not doing anything. He wants to give younger people more of a voice. He wants the Democratic Party to fight. And David Hogg is not, like a leftist per se. That's the thing. Like I would say maybe like a left moderate, but he's not progressive in that sense, but he does feel like things need to change. He said the Democratic Party are losing young men because of some of the policies that they have and the way that they're going. And he's right about these things, right? But they decided that they are going to try to find a way to remove him from that position, even though he was elected for that position, because they don't like the fact that he's trying to reform the Democratic Party. Now, I just want to remind everybody, after 2016, there was a DNC fraud lawsuit. Now, I interviewed the Becks, who were the lawyers that brought this lawsuit forward, along with Nico House. The lawsuit basically claimed that the DNC cheated Bernie Sanders and handed the nomination over to Hillary Clinton, which is true. Let me explain to you what the DNC argued in court. So the attorney for the DNC was Bruce Spiva. Bruce is off doing other things now. But what they argued is that the DNC is a corporation and that it's a private entity and that the DNC can decide who they want the nominee to be. They specifically stated that just because you voted for someone in a Democratic primary, that does not mean that they are going to be the nominee. The DNC makes the final decision. They argued this in court. The federal judge, the judge ruled that the DNC does not have to follow their own charter. Like this is very clear. People have to understand that it's not about who you vote for in the Democratic primary. The DNC is the final, say so. That's why they were able to, even though Bernie would win like every county in West Virginia 2016, they were able to give West Virginia to Hillary. It wasn't just West Virginia. There were multiple states that Bernie won and they gave to Hillary Clinton. That's why legally they were able to do that, because it is a corporation. So when you go out and you vote in the Democratic primary, you say, I'm voting for said person, and this person got this many votes and they're going to be the nominee. No, the DNC decides who they want the nominee to be. What that means is that there is no reforming the Democratic Party. You see what they're doing. They're trying to remove David Hogg. And by the way, the excuse that they're using is that there's no gender balance because the chair of the DNC is a male and the vice chair is a male. So it's not gender inclusive. And that's what they're using as an example to get rid of them, right? So when you see Bernie and AOC doing this oligarch tour, it's nice, but Bernie and AOC are not true opposition. The reason why they're not true opposition is because they've made it very clear to you that it all said and done, they're not trying to start a third party. They're not going to break from the Democratic Party. They're trying to basically fight back against Donald Trump. They're not trying to fight back against the corporatists and the corruption that is in the Democratic Party, because at the end of the day, they tell you to vote for said politician who is corporate and corrupt. Their job is to take left populist energy and to keep it in the Democratic Party, to prevent the expansion of a third party, to prevent an economic populist movement in the country. That is their job. Now, that may not have been AOC's plan when she first went in. I think she really did want to fight and she tried to, and then she had a talking to, and then everything changed. This is why you don't see Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman there anymore. They get rid of the people who don't fall in line. So when David Hogg announced that he had this plan to basically oust these incumbents and bring in fresh, young energy that was willing to fight, I said he has two options. He's either going to have to get in line or they're going to get rid of him. And now you see what's happening. They're trying to get rid of him. So the Democratic Party is not an oppositional party to the Republican Party, because they both respond to corporate interests. They both back and support the military industrial complex, and they are both against the working class. And we have to change our language. It's not enough to say the Democratic Party doesn't fight for the working class anymore. You have to start saying the Democratic Party is against the working class. When you saw during a pandemic, and the best that they could do was the American Rescue Plan, the child tax credit that they ended abruptly, which was supposed to go on longer, that is not in the benefit of the working class. So what you have is a Democratic Party that is putting a Band-Aid on a wound. You have a Republican Party that is taking the Band-Aid off the wound, but neither party is healing the wound. And that's what people have to fully grasp. Both parties exist to support corporate interests, and both parties are there to make sure that nothing breaks this system. This is why third parties have such a hard time. They sue them off the ballot. The Democratic Party actively sues the Green Party to kick them off the ballot. So they end up spending most of their money in these lawsuits, right? And legal fees. Neither one of them want to break the system. So both parties are there to make sure that the system maintains the status quo, that there is no change. So everyone say it with me. The Democratic Party is not an oppositional party to the Republican Party.
So
They
true.
they need each other to exist. The Democrats need the Republicans need the Democrats, and they feed off of each other. So
Mhm.
I think until people fully understand that that's why the system is the way it is, and that's why there's no breaking the system. Anytime you have a party that wasn't willing to withhold the weapons to Israel, that wasn't willing to actually call for a ceasefire and push the end of this, what happens is the pendulum swings in the other direction. So there were people who were supporting the Democrats that said, F this, I'm going to
Yep.
take my chances with Donald Trump. There were people like myself that voted third party, right? Or voted for independence. But the reality is a lot of people stayed home. 6 million people that voted for Joe Biden stayed home in 2024. So the Democratic Party is dead. They either can choose to rebrand and actually become the party of the working class again, but that's not going to happen because they're too captured by corporate interests and corporate money and lobby interests. And everybody keeps mentioning AIPAC. You need to know that Kufi is even more corrupt than AIPAC. There are more lobby interests happening around Kufi. This is the one that isn't mentioned as much. So it's not just AIPAC. There's a lot of lobby interest groups in there that are controlling those politicians, and that's why they don't fight for you. In my opinion, all of them need to go. The whole damn house needs to be rebuilt.
Two things. I remember watching a video where a Democrat went to somebody's house, like she was going around and said, "Hey, I saw that you voted for the Green Pack. Would you like to change your vote?" They were doing stuff like that. And the guy was like, "Why are you on my yard?" Like, why are you here? Like, are you seriously here asking me to remove my name from this list for this particular third party? It's like, get the hell off, get the F off my yard. The other part, just to be very clear, if I remember correctly, they said we can lie, cheat, and steal in a smoke-filled room. We're a corporation. We can do what we want, which is true, by the way. They're a corporation. They don't need to have primaries. They can choose whoever they want. It's almost like a company choosing a janitor or a bus driver. I like to compare it to a bus driver. It's like, all right, we need a company. The company is going to drive our buses for the schools, and that's what we need. And one day you get this company who has this slate of bus drivers, and another day you get another company that has another slate of bus drivers. I don't need your opinion on it. I get your opinion on it because you may not vote for the guy who I choose to run if I don't get your vote for it. But all things being equal, we have the veto power where we can say we don't like that guy, so we're just going to get rid of that guy. And we're going to dress it up as if it's a choice. We're going to dress it up as if it's a contest. We're going to do all that stuff. We're going to give the accoutrements of a democratic process. But at the end of the day, if we don't like that guy, we're not going to put that guy in. David Hogg's finding that out the hard way. He was vice chair in the Democratic, the DNC, and they coming up with this nonsense. I don't even know what you call it. It's so shameless. Where they're like, yeah, we got to get rid of that guy now. And we're coming up with some rationale in order to get rid of him. This is astonishing. Like, it's so blatant. Usually you try to be more sinister.
And I just want to add, everybody, all of the so-called independent media, that support Democratic Party, they all know what I'm telling you. This is not news. They all know about the DNC fraud lawsuit.
Of the world. That's right.
They all know, but they have built an audience around fighting in the Democratic Party. And now it's like, if they were to tell you what I just told you, then the viewers would say, well, what's the point? What's the point in even trying to fight in the Democratic Party? Then they have to come up with another project. You see what I mean? So people have to understand, some people are not telling you about this because they have audience capture and they don't want to like push, because the reality is, yeah, people are going to ask, what do you do next? So what I tell people is focus on organizing in your community, do mutual aid, fight on the local level. That's where you'll try to be going to have more success. Run ballot measures. If you live in a ballot initiative state, start running these ballot measures. By the way, a lot of these progressive policies that we wanted passed on the national level, guess where they're passing? In the states. If you pay attention to the rulings from the Supreme Courts, notice they've been pushing a lot of things back to the states. This is where a lot of the fight is really going to happen. So if you live in a BI state, start running those ballot measures. You want to increase the minimum wage, want a ballot measure for that. These things are passing in red states. These things are passed in states like Missouri, Nebraska, even some of the abortion initiatives have passed in red states to protect a woman's right to choose. So this is, they're not going to tell you that though, because if they tell you that, that means they got to actually do some work. That means they have to actually get up out of their seat and do some organizing. That means they have to lead people to do those things, and they don't want to do it because it's more profitable to be pro-Democrat or to be pro-Republican. And that's what everybody has to understand. So I say do what you can do locally. I do mutual aid workshops. We did one last month. We're going to do another one in June. And I announce those via my newsletter. So if you're interested in doing mutual aid, you can come to one of the workshops where I break down like how to get started, how to do it. I really want more people like doing mutual aid, not just, it's not just those of us at RBN. There are a lot of mutual aid organizations in the United States. And I think a lot of times people just don't know they're there. But that's one of the ways to get involved. If you do want to do electoral politics, I would say, again, focus on local. Focus on how many people know who their city councilors are, because you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know. And that's important because the city council controls the budget. Yeah. So when you want to know why like things are increasing in your city, like the prices are increasing here and why these zoning laws are changing, et cetera, that's city council. And then the mayor signs it. So I know people that are running for city council, like they said, I kind of encouraged them to get involved locally. So they're running for city council. You can run as independent, different things. Greens and independents have a better chance winning on the local level. And they have some of those seats that I just mentioned to you. So I would say like get started there, organize with people in your community. If you don't want to start something new, some of these organizations already exist. Look on Google, look in your area to see what organizations are already there that are doing community activism and community outreach. And that's how we're going to build a better world. You have to build dual power. The reason why things aren't working the way we've been doing it is because we're not building dual power. We're trying to elect said person, and then we're hoping that they fulfill the promises that they made. That hasn't been working out, has it?
Not so much. No. I think with the Democratic adjacent networks, I think part of it is audience capture. I think the other part of it is their brand is the party. And what are they without the party? Like think of Young Turks as a really good example, where Cenk changes, just not even significantly. I think he takes like one or two, like a position on trans or something, and his audience eats him alive. And you even have members of his own TYT thing, so eating him alive. And then all of these other Democratic adjacent networks are like, oh my God, I can't believe that you changed. You need to like, it was weird, like the degree of hate. But I think all of them have that. What's wrong?
Well, it's interesting because when when he was on my show recently, I spoke to him and I told him, like, I was like, this is a waste of time. Yeah. Like that basically that like now he's trying to do like a Justice Democrats 2.0, but it's a populist movement to get these candidates and all this. And I was just like, you should be. And I said it to him. I said, for those of us who have been organizing for years, like shows like TYT, shows like Majority Report, those shows should be sharing that information to their audience. And I said, you guys have not. When we were organizing for the marches for Medicare for All, you guys had nothing to do with it, didn't want anything to do with it. When people organized for Force the Vote, you were heavily against that, vehemently came out heavily against it. So the whole thing about people need to organize, people have been organizing for years. The problem is the gatekeepers in, I would say even quote unquote, independent media are not sharing that information with their audience. And they're the ones that have the most viewers. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like me and Jamal do, I think we're doing really well. But the reality is there's a big difference between us and a channel that has 6 million subscribers. Yeah. So you can't complain about people not organizing when people are organizing and they reached out to you and you wouldn't allow said organizers to come on and share that message. Yeah. So that's a big part of the thing. Like this whole Justice Democrats 2.0, it's a waste of time. People are wasting their money, donating money to these politicians. You should be donating your money to mutual aid. Like don't donate your money to food banks. Donate your money to things like that. Like you want to help right now. There's a fundraiser happening for Fred Hampton House in Chicago that RBN, that Rome and all my comrades at RBN are doing. Donate to that. Rome's like doubling up on diapers to give diapers and food and things to family members. Donate to that. Yeah. Why don't donate to these people? It made me, it really like it made me like ill seeing people like exclaim, yay, AOC raised over $9 million. Why are we excited about that? Why aren't we raising $9 million to enrich these communities? Why aren't we putting $9 million in Detroit? This is the problem. And meanwhile, these neighborhoods continue to crumble. People continue to have increased rates of homelessness and poverty. All the money that we sat and we donated to Bernie Sanders, think about what we could have done with that money. We could have built clinics in neighborhoods that don't have clinics. We could have done so much more. And that's what bothers me. So even if you see me interview people who are running, you never hear me say donate to them. Mm-hmm. Like the money is being put in the wrong places. And that really, it irks me. And it makes me sick to my stomach when I see all the money that went to Bernie Sanders and AOC for them to what? Just tell you to capitulate to the Democratic Party establishment.
So much money, billions. He was outraising Hillary Clinton, if you remember. Yep. Like he was putting in more money in the primaries than Hillary Clinton was putting on because he was getting small dollar donations, $2, $3, $9, $20. Speaking of our political space, we talked about this a little bit, but I know you don't think, well, and I'll just ask you, the Republican bill that they're putting out, that they're going through budget reconciliation for. So apparently it's passed the committee that it was in. It passed by what, one vote, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, one vote. 4 people abstain, 17-16. And then you get Johnson coming out saying he hopes to put it for a floor vote by Thursday. I imagine he needs to get his caucus online or his party online for it because they're going to gut Medicaid by like nearly $1 trillion, $800 billion. Trump is saying, well, that's just waste, fraud, and abuse that we're taking out of Medicaid. And of course, he's going to take that money and give himself and his other cronies a massive effing tax cut to the tune of like $5 trillion. They're talking about putting like $5 trillion on the debt. That's a debt that's already at 36 trillion that we're packing on like 2 trillion each year, that they're going to put another 5 trillion on just to pass out to themselves for all intents and purposes. The reason that our budget rating was cut was because it was like, all right, you guys have no capacity. A, we don't think you're going to pay that back. B, your government is dysfunctional. You have no capacity to even do anything to try to pay that much money back. You don't have the ability to raise taxes, at least not in any real terms. And not just raise taxes, you're cutting them further, which is effectively putting more money on the deficit, I should say. Do you think that's going to pass? I guess let me start with that first.
I don't know.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes, that bill is going to pass. It's a cash grab.
I was going to say it's what Trump wants, so most likely. Like this is very sad. They are taking money from the poor and giving it to the rich. They are the reverse Robin Hood.
Yes.
Reverse
the
Robin
man
Hood.
on the planet
Yeah.
is destroying Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare in order to save what, $150 billion? And they're about to put $5 trillion on the debt. Think about that. Like, people need to really put that in context. He's firing workers making a minimum wage and doing this ostensibly for $150 billion when they're literally about to, 20 times that much or some insane amount? I'm not going to do math on the fly because it's always a fool's errand. It's insane.
I'm just thinking about all the seniors that might run into an issue, the seniors that are residents at a long-term care facility. I used to work at a skilled nursing facility. That was my first job out of college. And I worked in accounts receivable. And so that's why I'm very familiar with how health insurance companies pay and private pay and Medicaid and all that type of jazz. But I'm thinking about all the people that are a skilled nursing facility and they are on Medicaid. And people have to understand too, like for those particular patients that like, in order for them to even have qualified for Medicaid, this is after they have exhausted all of their funds.
Yep.
So Medicaid is that last step, right? And like they are really taking from the poor to give to the rich.
Yeah.
And how do we get here? We get here by the Democrats not being a real opposition party. That's how you get back to a Donald Trump. That's how you get back to, and people really just need to see the level of corporate greed. This is why you hear me complain about billionaires. This is why you hear me complain about all these rich people who are getting all these tax breaks, but yet they're penalizing those who are poor. And I just don't understand how everybody can go along with that.
My grandmother, when she got ill and she was on Medicaid, and at that point you realize, okay, she needs help. She needs a nurse in the house. And you realize, okay, well, how much does this cost? And then Medicaid will say, okay, well, we'll give you X amount. It's a pittance in comparison to the amount of the cost. And so then it's like, okay, well, now we need to figure out how we're going to get the money in order to pay for this. So that becomes a family issue. Or you're going to have your family exhaust themselves like my mom did, just exhaust herself trying to take care of somebody who really should have a nurse in the home around the clock. But again, you have to pay that out of pocket. Whereas you would think that in a society that is rich as this country is, I mean, Elon Musk is going to be the world's first trillionaire, but somehow and look, I get it, right? Look, I always said they're sociopaths. I stay with that. And I say sociopaths, and I know people try to correct me. No, you can't correct me on this. It's a societal thing where you get accustomed to functioning in a particular system where, in your mind, the system says this is the way you should act and this is the way you should behave. In which case, they behave in the way the system tells them. When you have people putting all of this money down your G-string, do you think Mike Johnson is really looking out for his constituents when he's doing this? No, he's looking out for the people who are putting all of this money in his pocket. You have all of these millionaires and billionaires who are putting money in Mike Johnson's pocket. Mike Johnson says, all right, they want me to do this, and I need to go out and sell it. And that's what I'm going to do. And I would go further. Even if the American public is pissed off, you're only putting in Democrats who also are paid by the exact same people. When Obama got in office and Obama was running with this, what is it, the top 1% stuff, the language that he effectively stole from Occupy Wall Street, the majority of the people who Obama put into his administration were picked by Citigroup.
Yep.
Okay, so in one sense, he croons, he plays basketball, and he's bought by Citigroup, while all of a sudden saying the top 1% as if he's part of this Occupy Wall Street movement. And by the way, gutting Black home ownership when the housing crashes happen. So it's like, you get it on both ends. Like there's no way out of that box in regards to electoral politics, in the sense of, okay, if you're putting in a Democratic Party, a Republican Party. And the sad part about it, the thing that I really hoped is that Trump would smash the Democratic Party to pieces. I mean, like to pieces, like where pieces of glass just sprawl across the floor. Where on some level, no, I'm being serious. I am very punitive. after Sanders' run because of how flagrant that cheating was, right? I mean, granted, Sanders was a sheepdog, fair enough. But there's still something to be said about. Initially, there was this belief, at the very least, with me growing up, I'll say it this way, that, all right, third way Democrats have taken more of the leadership position, and you have the left. The left is nowhere else to go, so the left backs third way Democrats. However, if the left gets into somewhat of a leadership position where they seem they're clearly the strongest thing moving, that the third way would take the position of the left and say, okay, well, we'll back you. Okay, that was fundamentally destroyed during the Sanders era, where Chris Matthews comes out and says, maybe it's better to let Donald Trump win as opposed to let Sanders take it for a generation. Okay, that's honest. That's honest. I accept that. So don't come to me, Sam Cedar, and some of these other Democratic adjacent people saying, hey, the left should back. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Door shuts, right? Phone hangs up. They've already said the quiet part out loud in regards to the way they look at electoral politics. It's not about being fair. It's not about being honest or ethical or moral, any of those things. We could choose a candidate in the backfield, smoke-filled room if we need to. That is the honest part about it. That's the honest part in international politics too, by the way. It's just the way it works. It's your power. And the way that they look at it, we have the power to do a cash grab. Nobody's going to stop us from doing a cash grab. Even if some of these Republicans get taken out because they get pissed off at the Medicaid, Medicare stuff, you're putting in Democrats who are also paid by the same people who are not going to expand Social Security and Medicare. They're not going to increase the minimum wage. They're not going to, pass a childhood tax credit in any sense of the word that's going to last. That's not what they believe in. That's not what they think. And so what if you do a cash grab now? So what? It's going to teeter-totter back and forth anyway, because nothing is fundamentally going to change in a public who's looking for something different. It's never going to find that difference, and they're going to get had by one party or the next. That's cynical. I'm sorry. But that seems to be the way that it actually functions. And so I'm not shocked that these guys are like, if we can get 5 trillion, we're going to take 5 trillion. What are they going to do about it? That's dark, but it seems to be true. I don't know how it's not true.
It's a sad state of affairs where we are heading as a country. And I don't know if everyone watches Professor Richard Wolff's economic update, but he's been warning about this for quite some time, like the direction that we're going in. And we just have to remember there's more of us than there are the billionaires. There's way more of us. And we are like the 99%. And I think that's why, like, I don't know. I think we could be closer towards a revolution than I realize. Like, I think it's going to take like total collapse though, Jamal. I think it's going to take like total like economic collapse for people to say, F this, F the parties. I'm out to fight back against the rich people,
My assumption is collapse. I think a system goes until it can't go anymore, until all the productive energies of the system run dry. I think it's a mechanical process. I don't even think it's a human process. I think it's mechanical. It just goes until it can't go. When it can't go anymore, something comes next. Jack Fresco, and I'll let you go because we have gone well beyond our time. Jack Fresco has this thing called the Venus Project. And he points out, look, instead of using a system that deals with scarcity, where it's enforced scarcity, it's not because you need to have scarcity. I mean, you have technology, you can build all sorts of stuff. And you can build that stuff considering the amount of wealth that's in the world. Okay, what if that wealth is applied to getting rid of poverty? I mean, for God's sake, look at China. We spend all of the time screaming at China when the reality of it is our oligarchs just sent our businesses to China and the Philippines and other countries and just took the money for themselves and bought boats, yachts, cars. When you see a Mitt Romney with a car garage, okay, well, how do you think Romney got that money? Or how do you think some of these major CEOs, when Donald Trump goes over to Saudi Arabia, who do you think is going to profit from Donald Trump being in Saudi Arabia? Well, the people who he effectively had around him, those CEOs that were there. That's why they were there. And so it's not like they take that money and say, okay, we're going to do what's in the best interest of America. It's thank you very much for the cash in my pocket. I may start another business venture where I can make more profit off of it. But it's not this idea of, well, we're going to raise 800 billion people out of poverty. It's not that. It's not we're going to build high-speed rail. It's not we're going to build all of these buildings and these magnificent infrastructure. No, it's not that. It's different. And so we instead say it's China's fault that our oligarchs decided to profit and keep all the money for themselves. It's like those people are out of their minds. At some point, the public is going to be like, okay, this is too, meaning it would have to get to be so low that the energy to keep it going is less than the energy to change it.
It's really interesting, all the criticism that they have for China, because China feeds their students real food. We don't even feed like K through 12 real food, like in our schools, so they're upset with China's advancements and their infrastructure. Meanwhile, our infrastructure is falling apart.
Yeah.
If this is really about competition for you and you're really trying to compete, then you would be putting money and energy into improving our infrastructure, not pointing your finger at the people who surpassed us, right? Like that's what real competition would look like, but they don't care. Our bridges are falling apart. We don't even have high-speed rail in 2025. Like give me a break. So this country is falling apart. And the government, our government, is angry at the countries that are growing, like China, which is growing economically, and they do have a better infrastructure, or like Russia. You look at the subway in Moscow and compare it to subway stations here in the United States. So there's this jealousy, this anger, whatever, how dare they outdo us? But all these years that went by, we have not been putting, by we, I mean our government, has not been putting money in our infrastructure, improving it. I encourage everybody to look at a website called the American Civil Engineers Society, American Society of Civil Engineers. Look at their website. They have a report card for American infrastructure, and they grade us every year. Go check out that website and see what the grades are for American infrastructure.
By the way, and I'll let you go after this, Jon Stewart, if you remember when Tucker Carlson went over to Russia, he was like, oh my God, these subways, it's like, these things are, like museums. And the way that they were like the architecture and everything else. And Stewart said something about, made a joke about candelabras. And he said, our shitty subways is the price of freedom. It's like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like the notion that you think that New York subway system is the price of freedom, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. That was not what if this was the 1950s, 1960s, that is not the way they looked at the capitalistic system. Like they thought we have the best and brightest. We're competing against the Soviet Union. So our stuff have to look, we have better stores, we have better products, we have a burgeoning middle class, we have free speech, that was not the way that Jon Stewart is articulating it, the way it was supposed to be. So, Sabrina, thank you for this. I kept you long. I didn't mean to keep you long. We got into the conversation about Biden and everything else. Thank you for this. Sabrina Savati, or Sabby Sabs, as she's commonly known. She's a Boston-based activist, leftist, and podcaster. She is a member of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, a Black-led multicultural network and co-op of everyday people, activists, and allies focused on empowering our communities through education, organization, and direct action. Thank you for this. By the way, when is your next show? It's not every day. And sometimes I get the schedule wrong. I saw you on last night, but when is the next one?
Tuesday. Yeah, tomorrow night, Tuesday evening, Garland Nixon and Larry Wilkerson will be on.
That should be a good one.
Yeah.
That should be a good one. All right. You have a fantastic day. I will talk to you in a few. Be safe, okay?